So a few months ago, I made this video called the Top 10 Best Things Happening in Anime This Decade. And at the time, I had made both that list and a counter list, but I only was able to come up with 5 things for the worst things happening in anime this decade. And at the time, Devu, who was my editor, was like just starting to really watch tons and tons of anime and get really excited about it. So he wasn't too into the idea of doing like a super negative video. And honestly, I kind of want to stray away from having too much negativity on my channel because ultimately I feel very positively about anime and trying to, spread the idea that anime is cool and there's lots of good stuff happening in the medium is more my message than complaining about it. But I feel like it would be a waste not to at least bring these up somewhere. So even if they don't end up getting a full video, I thought I might as well just talk about them here. I hate this lighting is very strange. I hate how bright these CDs are. Yeah, fuck the dark. Alright, this is the top 6 worst things happening in anime this decade, starting with the stuff that's not as big of a deal. The first one is Toei nostalgia properties. So for those who don't know, Toei is like one of the biggest animation studios in Japan, in I guess the world. They've done tons and tons and tons of classic shows that everybody knows and loves because they've been responsible for so many of the Shonen Jump adaptations and other big long-running series. And in the last couple of years, they've been like bringing back all these major nostalgia properties like Dragon Ball, which just got brought back with Dragon Ball Super. They've made Sailor Moon Crystal, which is a readaptation of the original Sailor Moon manga. They've brought back Digimon Adventure with Digimon Tri, a series of films which takes place like 10 years later in the franchise. And they had Saint Seiya Omega, which, while Saint Seiya was never a big deal in the United States, it is for a lot of the world. And all of them have been these really awkward and, like, at times terrible adaptations. I've been hearing that Sailor Moon Crystal and Dragon Ball Super have gotten better over the course of their run in terms of the storyline, but the animation has been like, there's been lots of just shit animation throughout both series. People have been decrying the production values of each. Digimon, I've heard, people going both ways on the quality of the film storyline. I know some people really love them, but the production values are pretty fucking bad. For something that's being released in theaters, especially, it's kind of embarrassing. And Saint Seiya Omega was just like a weird kind of nightmare to watch. I only saw the first episode of it, but it was haunting. So, yeah, Toei, like, it's not so much that these shows are just like so bad as that why would you not bring back your nostalgia properties in like full glory? Why not have them re-emerge even better than ever before? That's kind of the best way to do this kind of thing. And if you want to see a series that's done that amicably, Lupin the Third, which has been, a legacy series from back in the 70s, came back with these amazing like Takeshi Koike designed series, and like there was the artful woman called Fujiko Mine, and then this really just excellent series of Lupin episodes that came out between last year and this year. That's what it should be. That's what you should be doing with the Legacy series. Make it bigger and better than ever. Why would they not animate, a new Dragon Ball Z with a level of flair that would have made it take off and be everywhere? If any of the nostalgia properties had been like high budget, high effort endeavors, they would have been like huge worldwide successes, because these are all shows that are really deeply ingrained into the public consciousness. And if people were out there tweeting like, wow, new Dragon Ball Z better than ever, as opposed to, wow, new Dragon Ball kind of looks like shit, they probably would have had a pretty big resurrection of these shows on their hands. But yeah, it's just kind of a shame. My next one that's not that big a deal is franchises overtaking genres. So there's certain genres of anime that have kind of faded away. One would be the mecha genre, and I know a lot of people are very upset about this who are big mecha fans, that mecha has kind of been just replaced with Gundam. I mean, Gundam was always the biggest mecha franchise anyways. It's been going forever. There's, thousands of fucking incarnations of it. Not literally thousands. I don't know why I went that big. Dozens and dozens of incarnations of it. But now there's like almost nothing else. There's barely any other mecha shows being made, and I mean, even this year we've kind of gotten lucky because we had Kuro Mukuro and Regalia, which both are kind of like weird and maybe not exactly what mecha fans were hoping for. But yeah, the mecha genre has basically just become Gundam. And for what it's worth, Gundam has been great for the last couple of years. But like, it's just kind of a shame to see a whole genre just get condensed into one franchise. And likewise, it doesn't seem like there's as many magical girl shows around anymore. Like, I feel like the magical idol show has kind of upended the magical girl show, and it's like we just have Precure now, aside from Sailor Moon Crystal, and like all these adult magical girl shows like Madoka that are like trying to be subversive in some way or another. Precure's like the only magical girl show that's just like a pure kids show that's left. So yeah, it's weird to see these genres just sort of getting condensed into one show. Not that I think necessarily it's ruined the genres or anything, but I think it's a shame to not see them necessarily doing lots of experimentation and going in new directions. They just kind of have condensed themselves into like, well, this one was the best and the most successful, so that's the one that stays alive. Alright, so now we're going to get into some stuff that's a little bit more of a big deal. At least this one is for me, which is light novels becoming science. I'm talking about the Asterisk War problem, the whole thing I ranted about in that whole 13-episode series, that light novel adaptations like have just, and like what they're based on, the light novels have just become this incredibly rote, like systematized style of writing. Like, it used to be that what was cool about light novels was that they were experimental and different. Like, I used to be a really huge fan of light novels back in the mid and late 2000s, back when, like, light novel series were basically existed to take anime style, anime tropes, that kind of writing, and combine it with really interesting, different ideas. Back when it was like Nisio Isin and Kohei Kodono and those people writing these stories. And then, at some point, when light novels like really became this standard like thing that was getting adapted to animation and stuff, then for some reason light novels became a way for really shitty authors to get published just by being attached to a decent artist. That's like all it is. It's all these incredibly similar, generic, shitty stories that are written by hacks with no imagination who get some, well-known character designer attached to the series, and then people will want to read it because of the character designs, because of the cute girls with swords. And now we just have this horrible, trite formula. And thankfully, this year it's been less extreme than it was in the last few years. I feel like after the Asterisk War, it's gotten a little bit slower. We still had like Maso Gaku and HXH and shit like that this year, but like at least it's not as bad as last year where there was literally 3 of these every fucking season. But it just makes me really sad to see that light novels, which used to be so cool, are now like the worst thing. Like when I see light novel next to a show, I'm the most afraid of what I'm gonna get. Whereas I used to be the most excited about what I was gonna get. So that's been a real shame. Alright, this next one's a pretty big deal for anime on a worldwide scale, which is copyright and region locking. These are huge issues that are preventing anime from expanding in the way that it should. Copyright, by which I mean constant takedowns of YouTube videos, constant copyright strikes, constant everything. Japan is so fucking protective of its copyrights, and it doesn't make any sense. And I'm not just talking about stuff like my videos, where I literally will like write 20 minutes of why this anime is the greatest thing that ever happened, and get all these people to watch the show and then somehow get a copyright strike from the company. Like, I'm literally giving them free advertising and they're striking me. But even just stuff like all anime OPs being so fucking hard to find on YouTube. Like every time someone uploads an anime OP, it gets taken down immediately, and I'm constantly having to search for them. And it's like, anime OPs being on YouTube is like such an easy way to advertise your show and keep it in people's minds, Like, because they're so worried about selling the fucking singles or whatever, or selling the Blu-rays, they're not actually thinking about like what will get people talking about the show, what will make it easier to share. They're not accounting for social media in any kind of intelligent way, And I feel like probably some of the animation studios themselves probably get that, but it's the companies who are who are paying for these shows to be made, the producers who don't get it, who aren't like adapting to the modern internet and seeing that there's ways to make shows more accessible and easier for other people to look at. And of course, region locking is I don't understand it at all, how it's so bad. How is it that when I fucking say, like, oh, Crunchyroll just added this show, and I post it on Twitter, then I have to get, like, 25 replies from people, it's not in my country, oh, it's only available in the US. Why? Why would they do this? It doesn't make any fucking sense to set up this system that's like blocking you from being able to reach a much wider audience. And I know that a lot of it is because they're worried about getting those niche fans, but how do you make more niche fans if not by casting a wider net in such an easy way? You don't even have to change the way that you make the shows. You just have to make it so everyone who's interested in those shows can have access to them. That's a huge fucking issue that needs to be taken care of. Alright, now for the two biggest problems facing the animation industry. One of them is literal death. People dying. I've talked about this in videos like Anime Shit Now, how there's a lot of, legendary directors who are just dying. And like, Satoshi Kon died and his genre's not around anymore. So many people have died this year. It's been crazy. I don't know if it's just because I've been following Anime News Network posts more closely this year that I'm seeing more of it, but there's just been so many, like, voice actors and animators and directors, so a lot of the core Studio Ghibli staff are starting to die out, because, there's a lot of older people in the core Ghibli staff. Masao Maruyama's in poor health. A lot of people are either dying or have died in this last year, and we're just losing too many good people, and hopefully we have enough young talent to, fill in for them coming into the industry, but sort of remains to be seen. But the biggest problem facing anime is simply the working conditions. The working conditions of animators and of everyone involved. The working conditions of living in Japan in general. There was just a study out recently that like 20% of Japan's entire workforce are at risk of working themselves literally to death, because in Japan work is all you do. You get a job and then you just work and that's your life. And I really think that aside from the fact that the work culture is so broken as it is, it's also the fact that the animation industry just doesn't pay enough. It does not pay enough for the amount of work that is being done. The work is undervalued, and it's probably because, the margins are so small on like profit for anime, because they're making hundreds of anime every year, and each one is only seeking to eke out to get this niche market and get that little bit of money that'll make them be able to just enough to pay off the difference in having made the show, and then with a little bit more, just a little bit of profit, as opposed to making smash hits that that could have more of a worldwide appeal. And the problem is, it's too much work to do that. It's too much work to have to constantly crank out shows for any profit, as opposed to having some decent profit margins for anything. I think that's part of the issue, and of course just the work culture in general. But yeah, everyone's getting paid way too little. Everyone who works on anime is dramatically underpaid. And there needs to be ways for anime to make more money than it's making now, both in terms of reaching more people, reaching a bigger audience, and in terms of giving that audience a better way to pay them. I think that the American market is dramatically undertapped because of the fact that the only way to, pay for anime here is either a subscription service that gives basically nothing to the individual creators, or buying Blu-rays at what would be huge discount prices compared to what they would be in Japan, which means they're not helpful enough. If we just had some, I've said this before, if every studio just had a fucking Patreon, essentially, if I could just give $5 every week to a show that I enjoyed, I think that would be a huge step up in being able to let the international market help to fund shows. So those are the the 6 biggest problems I see happening in the anime industry in the current decade.